Hello, fellow vets. Just wanted to share something real quick with you. If you are a veteran-owned business, you need to take a serious look at this organization and this video here with Keith King. There is a lot of opportunities out there for you as a veteran-owned business to do business with big corporations. Keith King dives into what it takes to get certified, how to get certified, and then how to do business with these corporations. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
I know we don't have time today. Maybe on another call, I'll tell you about the fun I have with 2, 3, and 4-star generals. We now have over 160 corporations that recognize, accept our certification. The report that came in from the $1 Billion Roundtable, these 32 corporations, it came out and said the amount of money spent with the certified veteran businesses from NVBDC, $3.3 billion. Yeah, you're going to pay for this certification, but that certification is going to open doors for you that you're never going to get in without it. We've been able to certify over 2,000 veteran businesses. The corporations lived up to their word. We encourage our veteran businesses to work with each other. Because of your certification, I got an opportunity and I won this opportunity. It's a $40 million contract. Because the point that we make constantly is that think of any part of society today that is more united than the military.
Who is Keith King? And what inspired you to start the National Veterans Business Development Council?
I guess when you start from the motivation behind all of this thing, it's probably best to at least let you know that I am a veteran. I am a Vietnam vet. I'm what other people refer to me as an in-country combat vet, for what that means. I started as a veterans advocate, if you will, back in 1980. And over those years, what I learned was that, first and foremost, as a Vietnam vet, we learned if we didn't take care of each other, no one else was going to. It was not popular. It was actually detrimental to my career. It was detrimental to me personally. For being a Vietnam vet, and I know a lot of people in today's, environment and how we treat veterans today is so much different. And actually, we, being the Vietnam vets, had a lot to do with that in the sense that we wanted to make sure the media understood that by the things that they said, the way they portrayed Vietnam vets, the way that they went in regards to their coverage of the war was not only detrimental, it really caused a whole lot of problems that weren't necessary as far as we were concerned. And our real issue was don't do this to our sons, our daughters, don't do this to the next generation of veterans. And so we advocated quite bluntly with the media is don't treat these guys the way you treated us. But along the way, a lot of very dedicated Vietnam vets and other veterans helped write and create a law that was passed in 1999. It's Public Law 10650 that created veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses in federal contracting as legal business or legal contracting entities in the federal government. That's where this all began. Shortly after that law was passed, my guys in D.C. called me and said, look, Keith, you're one of the few disabled vets we know that owns a business, and we think you ought to try this government contracting stuff. We fought hard to get that law passed, and now that we got it passed, we need people to try it. I spent the next 14 years of my business, like my life, pursuing the federal contracting. And that is a very rough arena to play in. And it changed my business, frankly, had to. But I also was lucky enough or good enough or a combination of there to make a living. And as I progressed through those years of federal contracting, thankfully, I also maintained some of my what I call commercial or corporate business contracts as well. And what happened, make a long story short, on that issue was there was a particular incident that really kind of shined a light on how theoretically the government contracting was supposed to recognize veteran-owned businesses, was supposed to work with service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. There was a lot of good gestures, a lot of goodwill, but the truth was a lot different than what the bill was originally written for, and how that bill was intended to be implemented. I learned a lot more than I ever wanted to learn in regards to legislative activity, how bills are passed, how they're implemented, in particular how they're implemented. Because again, even though it was written to do X, by the time they implemented it, it was doing Y. And anyways, what happened along the way was corporations have a program called supplier diversity. And that program featured women and minorities. Minorities were the first social group, if you will, to be given a designation as being qualified to work in or under the program of supplier diversity. And a certification was developed. And then women came along, actually almost 25 years later. Well, by the time I got around to sitting down and looking at supplier diversity, that was 2012. And I'm in Detroit, started knocking on doors. We got a few corporations you probably heard of, like Ford, Chrysler, General Motors, down the road. Yeah, but hey. I joke about it. I've been thrown out of more offices than most people were in because they go, man, look, we don't have veterans. We don't use veterans. I gotta get out. And I finally said to them, wait a minute. What if we took a different approach? What if I said we should be? And frankly, what happened is because they use these terms disadvantaged, what we did is we wrote the rationale. Because even to this day, it doesn't. Sometimes when I talk about this, people say, oh, that was 100 years ago. No, it isn't. Still today. And what I'm getting at is as many of the enlisted people in today's military, if they're married, have children, can still qualify for food stamps. You start looking at what benefits we being Vietnam vets, compared to what our fathers in World War II vets had. I mean, it was cut like in 2/3. So all of the kind of support that the veterans from World War II had was decimated for Vietnam vets. And of course, at the time, we were looking to say, well, wait a minute, let's take a look at education. Let's take a look at delayed careers. If you're in the military for 4 years and you join out of high school, that same 4 years would cover, the people you graduated high school with in their college. They come out, they got a college degree, they're already working, developing their career, developing their money, and that whole climb, right? And what are you doing? You're trying to reacclimate and come back into society. So there's that whole lag. Well, that lag is only money, education, socialization, networking, is the term we use today. You had to basically start your life over. And when we wrote that rationale, thankfully, the corporations who we were working with said, okay, we agree with this, okay? But, I hate that word. Yeah, but what? Well, we're not going to give you veterans any kind of a contract under supplier diversity until you create a certification program that meets our standards. What's that? What do you mean standards? Whose standards? What do you mean your standard? Okay. Well, they being the corporations, were good enough, kind enough to say, look, in Detroit, we have two of the largest women business organizations and the minority business associations. And here's their name, phone number, reach out to them. I joke about it. They took pity on me and said, yeah, come on, I'll teach you. But they did. The person that I referred to as my business partner, retired Brigadier General Dick Miller. General Miller, myself, and a couple of other veteran business owners really began a 15-month process of not only going to meetings and hearings and the paperwork and learning certification, going out in the streets, what's called on-site visits to companies. But we also had to write the SOP. You know, as good military guys, we had to sit down and write the whole structure, and that's what we did. We created the National Veteran Business Development Council. We developed the entire certification based on what we had been taught between the women and the minorities, which is about 90-some% the same as far as paperwork. What we tell people is what we did is we meshed those two. So we knew what we had in certification, and we did the overlay. In the overlay, as a veteran, you call me, you say, hey, I want to get certified. The first thing I'm going to do is pull the documentation to prove that you're a vet. I don't care who you are. We don't take documents from anybody directly. I know we don't have time today. Maybe on another call, I'll tell you about the fun I have with 2, 3, and 4-star generals. Calling me up and going, what? What do you mean? But no, we pull your military records because the point was, and it always has been from day one, is if the corporations were going to include veteran-owned businesses in their supplier diversity program, the one thing that we owe them is as much confidence in our certification program as we could generate, simply because we don't want them to give contracts to somebody who's not a veteran. And the other part of this was, and again, you know, we were always grateful to our mentors, it's not enough to be a vet or a woman or a minority. That's only like what we call half the formula, because the other part of the formula is what is called operational control and authority. Most of the fraud in the government, most of the stuff that we run into where we'll deny, is based on operational control and authority. I mean, I've been in places, and matter of fact, one of my board members had called me just last month, anyways, infuriated in talking to a veteran who blatantly said, "Oh, I don't do that. I just get the contract. I take 5% off the top and give it to somebody else to do the job." Guess what? That's illegal. It's called a pass-through. It's called fraud. It's called all kinds of different names. But that has been and continues to be the major area of concern. So when our corporation said, look, we'll help the vets. We'd love to work with the vets. You just need to make sure that your program proves, number one, they're a veteran, and number two, they actually show up and run the company. That all happened even though, again, the initial phase of building the NVBDC was back in 2012. By the time we got ourselves together, we spent those 15 months of 2013 and into April of 2014. Where we did what we refer to as our beta test on certification. In that room, there were like 14 organizations, women, the minorities, the SBA, the VA, Chrysler, Ford, General Motors, Kellogg's, AT&T, a bunch of them. The good news for us was everyone in that room said, all right, you know what you're doing. Go ahead and build it. We'll help you. And what was critical about that is the help. And that's why I try to tell the vets every day, be thankful for the help and the support of our corporate, because we wouldn't have what we have today. But the corporations basically put in writing that, hey, we will, number one, accept veterans. Number two, we'll accept the NVBDC as their certifying body. And number three, you know, they put that in writing on letterhead and said, yeah, you can share that with other companies. And by the way, they gave us a check. And obviously, we learned real quick that to do certification is expensive. And the amount of money that we would have needed to charge veterans to make money was much higher than they would have to pay if they were a woman or a minority, so it's a competitive situation. But more importantly, most of them were going, well, wait a minute, I get free from the government. We always use a typical, you know, what value something free is. It has no value. Anyways, well, along that process, we went back to those same corporations and said, hey, I can't do this with the way that we're being structured. Can you support us? And knowing that you will help subsidize us to actually certify the veterans. And thankfully, they said, yeah, we know. Oh, it'd been easier if you would have told me up front, make me sweat this out for. But anyways, we now have over 160 corporations that recognize, accept our certification. But I think the big thing, and I'm still working in the minutia, if you will. We recently received a report from a group called the $1 Billion Roundtable. And these are now 32 corporations that spend $1 billion a year in their supplier diversity program, which is primarily the women, the minorities, the veterans. They now include the gay and lesbian and disabled. Before, they were spending $1 billion with women and minority only. So for them to include us, that was in 2017. And again, thankfully, they had done a evaluation of 5 different organizations that claim to do veteran business certification. We were the only one that they not only accepted in their information, their press release, they said we're the only ones that met their audit standards. And again, I go back to the women and minorities, our mentors, and frankly, our process of pulling actual governmental documents to prove that they're a veteran. So anyways, that I think moved us into a completely different realm, if you will, because just recently we have a $1 billion roundtable income impact study. Revenue impact study. I have been telling people for the last couple of years that I didn't have the real figures because of COVID, but the estimates from just generally talking to our corporate members was around 2.4 billion. Well, the problem with that is I keep making that stuff up, prove it, right? I didn't have any way to prove it other than, well, pick a phone, call this guy, and he'll tell you spent, 40 million with me, and this guy spent 400 million, right? The report that came in from the $1 Billion Roundtable, these 32 corporations and the people who put that study together, quite incredible, by the way, came out and said, look, the amount of money spent with the certified veteran businesses from NVBDC in what they call tier 1 spend, which is a upper supplier spend, 3.3 billion. And we went, whoa, okay, I'm sorry, I've been underestimating. Gee guys, well, what they did, which to me was
That's
fascinating. Awesome. Well, yeah, all of a sudden you're going, whoa. Listen, I go back and write everybody, hey, I'm sorry, I said it was 2 billion. No, it's really 3.3. Please forgive me. But what they did in that impact study, I found it fascinating because they were taking a look at the total number of employees of our veteran businesses. They were taking a look at the payroll of our veteran businesses. They were looking at the economic impact, really, right? And they came out and said, well, the total impact, if you look at the employees, you look at the payroll, you look at all of this stuff, was $6.7 billion. And I'm going, I think I was the dumb one, man. I should have just turned this over and kept my business running because, I shut my personal company down, But I got to tell you, I give thanks to our corporations. I give thanks not only to those in the early days who supported us and still support us. I'm very proud of that. But to the vets, because again, what we went into the market is said, yeah, you're going to pay for this certification, but that certification is going to open doors for you that you're never going to get in without it. And people say, well, what does your certification do? From day one, we said it's going to do 2 things for you. Number one, it's going to give you access to these corporations. And because of them, they're going to give you opportunity to bid or to at least participate in their contracting. Gives you access and opportunity. Those veterans who have been with us basically right from the beginning, it was rough. It was hard. It was, it wasn't easy. I was down in Dallas a couple of months ago, and one of the vets walked up to me and said, "Hey, you want to know what the vets say about you?" "About me?" "No, about your certification." Okay, what?" "Oh, it's a pain in the ass." "What?" "Oh, it's hard." Yeah, yeah, but I want you to know we're all proud to get it. You know what? I can live with that.
Yeah.
You know that? I mean, yeah, it might be hard, but I'm sorry. Not everybody, is a Ranger. Not everybody's a Navy SEAL. I mean, come on. But the fact of the matter is we've been able to certify over 2,000 veteran businesses. The good news is we got a target of 2.4 million, so we got a lot of room to grow. A lot more room. In the meantime, when we have this affirmation that the corporations lived up to their word. They said they would help us. They said, "Hey, build it, we'll help you." Well, they did, and they still are to this day. And when we go out and talk to the vets who are skeptical, and I tell our corporation, look, you got to understand, a lot of our vets are so skeptical. They want to all do this thing with the government. God bless them. I did it. I was there for 14 years and basically did it shortly. My company was one of the first, 2025 ever recognized as a disabled veteran by the government. Okay? I mean, you want to talk to me about federal contracting? That's great. But we've opened the door to the total of that $1 billion roundtable group alone, $96 billion that they've spent in supplier diversity. So to me, to me, the potential, you get a piece of a pie. Well, I got a pretty good sized pie, and what we said is, hey, get certified and at least they'll talk to you. I have one of the emails sent to me that one of my veteran businesses said, "Keith, I just want to let you know I haven't gotten the contract, but I've been pursuing these 6 companies now for 5 years. They basically told me to go away and don't bother them. I've called them, told them I'm now certified with you. I have appointments with all 6." And I went, look, that's the only thing I ever promised. Access, right?
Yep.
Well, every once in a while, I'll shoot an email and say, "Well, how many contracts of those 6?" It's, "Well, I got 1, but I got 2 more pending." Well, okay, you know what? I never promised them money or contracts, but what I did promise them is exactly what we've delivered. Whereas one of the things I really like about what we do, Brian, is we encourage our veteran businesses to work with each other. And I have a little group that one of my construction guys called me and said, "You know what, Keith, because of your certification, I got an opportunity and I won this opportunity. It's a $40 million contract." I said, "Oh my God, I want a success story. I want press releases. Oh my God." He says, "No, you can't." "Why?" I said, "Well, the job requires a 10% bond. I don't have $4 million for a bond." "Well, neither do I."
Yeah.
"I'm sorry, dude. I might have $4,000, but I mean, not quite the same." Anyways, we started talking to some of our other veteran businesses, and one of the construction companies says, "You know what? I'll join them. I have a bond up to $100 million, so I already got it covered. We can do that. This will be the bonding." And anyways, 4 of our veteran businesses formed together and won that contract. Okay.
That's
Now,
awesome.
as far as I know, they're still working together. And that was probably 7, 8 years ago. And I haven't talked to them in a while. Last time I heard about it, they had like 100 million, 120 million, whatever it was, contract. And I kept saying, "Look, let me explain this to you. The name is Keith, K-E-I." Hey, But again, when we look at all of this, myself personally, my son's a vet. My nephew did 2 tours in Iraq. My grandson just got out of the Army, and that's what we created this for. We felt that supplier diversity was going to open an opportunity to what I call the younger vets or next generation of veterans. Being a Vietnam vet, I'm usually labeled as an old guy. And that's okay. I can take that. I tell them, look, I'm just happy to still be alive to be called old. I ain't worried about being old. But what is great is when we get this justification, we get this affirmation, as I mentioned, that the corporations haven't done what they said they would do. This group, again, the $1 billion roundtable, we're talking about it right now. We have 28 of the 32 members of the $1 billion roundtable are our corporate members. We have 2 pending. So, my job is to close and make sure I get all 32 of them.
Absolutely.
I mean, when my board is busting my chops, it's like, what are you sleeping? Go get the other 4. But it is a task, if you will, of joy. I shut down my business to create this, and I was in a time and a place in my life where I thought I could do this. With General Miller joining me, we talked about, look, with me being in Vietnam and him being in Afghanistan, I mean, this man commanded our troops in Afghanistan, most of Kandahar Province, if not the entire province. And between the 2 of us, we cover a whole lot of war and a whole lot of vets. Okay. And then the other veteran businesses who helped join with me on my board and my other officers, we have a huge array of all kinds of different times, different where they served, what they did. It's amazing to me because I have some Air Force guys who were involved in medical. But until you start talking to them and you see their perspective of what it was that helped basically patch us patch us back up, it brings a different perspective, but their heart's in the same place. Let's make sure that we take care of our vets, and that's what the NVBDC does.
That's a phenomenal story. It's impactful
Thank you.
to hear how those veterans came together and formed that bond.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like a fraternity, right?
It is.
Why wouldn't they want to talk to each other? Because, I mean, you're learning different business practices and all those sorts of things. So you said you had 2,000 veterans businesses come through your program.
Right.
Do you have like statistics on like success rates of all these? Like, you mentioned the guy who, he kept trying and trying and trying, and then until he got that certification, that's when he finally landed that job.
Yeah, the thing, we have a fairly sophisticated database. Actually, we created this database from scratch because we knew that we wanted to capture information that, first off, probably most people wouldn't know about. And then secondly, to be able to say how many women, how many minorities. Because the point that we make constantly is that think of any part of society today that is more united than the military. I was a gunner in Vietnam. Okay, I can't think of anybody of any color, of any whatever, who said, "Yeah, no, I don't want to be with King when he's the gunner." Okay, I mean, I gunned for 8.5 months. I made it home. I figured, I did something right. Well, maybe that's a little over the top with it all, but the fact of the matter is that we never really cared. Maybe later on, but I guarantee you in a firefight, you never saw anything other than this is a guy or a woman who is going to help and is going to do their job to keep me alive. I'm going to do everything I can to keep them alive. Everything else, doesn't have any value. So when you get to that level, if you will, or to that point of view, that's kind of what we brought in here, the attitude. It's like my certification manager, right? Did 2 tours in the original Persian Gulf War, right? Did his first tour and then went back a second time for it while it's still involved. But his unit was a unit that swept out of Kuwait into Iraq and into Basra. All right, well, okay. But those are the kind of things that we understand as a veteran. And it's the kind of thing that what we do is make sure that we not only honor that, we use the words integrity, honor, because we believe those words, we live those words. And what we want to be able to make sure that we do when we're talking to our vets is be not only honest, but in some cases, I know some of my guys don't like me talking to the vets anymore because, I'm a little kind of blunt. I may say things that might not be PC today, okay? I might actually use some language that people might not agree with. And, my attitude is what are you going to do? Send me to Vietnam? And, hey, I already been there, man. Don't bother me. So anyways, we have fun with it. And that's what I was really trying to say is that, yeah, we're like a brotherhood. Yeah, but we're a brotherhood to make sure that what we do is we don't hurt one another. We run into situations constantly with the certification program where we have to go back to the veteran and say, look, here's what you've done. You put an operating agreement together that basically says your board's in charge. In fact, what it really says is that you can't really do anything without their permission. I did? Yeah, you did. Well, that's not the case. I don't care what the case is. I'm telling you what So you're going to have to go back and rewrite your operating agreement. Okay? I can't certify you. Operational control and authority. Dude, you have no authority whatsoever. Oh, I'm the damn boss. Well, okay, prove it. Those are the kind of, if you will, what we call the minutia of what we do. But it's the same reason that we have the reputation we have. Because we have not only been trained to look for that stuff, we understand it, doing all the different things we've done. I'm very proud of the people that have lent their name, their talent, their skill, in some cases their money to us to help us build who we are. I was talking about our database. We're in our third version of this database because what we began to understand and realize is how much easier, faster we can make it for the veteran because the information is the same. It's just a process of how and when do we get that information and how do we make that easier for the vet to get it to us. Again, technical stuff that, most people would take, well, yeah, of course. Well, as an example, when we first built it, we had a 5 meg limit on the files that you could upload. That didn't go well. Okay, next thing I know, it's like, I got a 22 meg file sitting over here, and it's been running for 12 hours. Oh, God.
It's like dial-up, right?
Thank you. It's like a fax machine, for God's sake. We said, okay, so what should we do? And so all of a sudden, I'm doing 10, 15, 20, 25 meg file limit. Well, now, if need be, it's unlimited, but you better be giving me something worth that kind of a movement, right? But that's the part of hands-on. That's the part of being a vet. It's a part of saying, okay, let's take a look at what we're doing and how can we do it bigger, better, faster for our vets and make sure that we still meet all of those integrity benchmarks. And again, those are the kind of things that some of the vets go, well, I shouldn't have to do all this. Yeah, you should. I don't want to give you that information. I wouldn't give that information to my wife. Dude, I'm sorry you got such a bad relationship, but that ain't, I don't really care if you give it to your wife or not, but you're going to give it to me if you want to be certified. If you don't, go away. Don't bother me. Oh, man, come on. One of the things I joke about is the higher the rank, the easier they are for us because it's like, listen, General, the one thing I absolutely know about generals is you learn how to follow orders. If you want to be certified, I need this document. Now you can bitch and complain all you want, but until I get this document, I'm not going to certify you. Oh crap. Well, okay, well, I'll have my assistant. I'll have my aide. Well, okay, have your aide, upload that bad boy for me. We'll get you taken care of, General. Not a problem. Unfortunately, you do run into that situation where some people say, hey, you're too intrusive. But if we get you certified and you win a 40 or $100 million contract, am I still too intrusive? You're going to complain again? So there's that balancing act, if you will. And it's something that we feel very good about. It's something that we feel that, we joke about veterans know how to follow orders. I told you right up front, we wrote an SOP. I actually had to send them when somebody said, oh, yeah, well, I want to see it. You want to see what? Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta master the little things before you're gonna be good at the big things.
Well, the fact that he was a first sergeant, I just thought I would indulge him and go, okay, look, Sergeant, you really want my SOP? Yeah, I want to see it. Okay. I sent it to him. He calls me back, says, okay, well, no, I've seen it. I'm going to go ahead. Well, thanks, Sarge.
So what is the process, high level overview? You don't have to go into the weeds, but, what is the process of getting certified and how long does it usually take?
The process is go to my website, NVBDC.org, .com. So .org, and up at the top you'll see the tab says certification. Click that on and just follow the instructions. Along the way, as a matter of fact, one of the first things we ask you to do, and we strongly suggest you do, is print the checklist. We even go so far as to say, look, don't go any further with the certification until you read this checklist and get your documents prepared. Okay? You're going to have to upload all this stuff to us. Just take the time to get them prepared before you go on, because the next step in is you actually begin to register. You have to pay. Once you've paid, then it opens up into our program, our certification program, where you begin to fill in your information and start uploading those files. To answer your question, one of the things we have learned over the years, my clock doesn't start until you get me all of your documents. I had a guy call me, oh man, it's been 100 days. Wait a minute, let me look at your your file. And I'm sorry about the phone. We go in and look at it, and it was like, wait a minute, you've uploaded like 5 things. I need 15 things. This is on you. Oh, I got busy. I forgot. To answer your question, once I have all your material, I can usually do it within 30 to 45 days. If it gets really hard, I'll push it to 90, but we don't normally go out that far. So, 60 days I think would be a fair amount, because again, the thing that we need to do is not only go through your documents. The process, without getting into minutiae, also includes us doing an on-site visit. So we got to get scheduled, either virtually or physically. I know I just sent one of my certification teams members out to St. Louis because the veteran said, I do not want to put this on video. Come and see me. So we did. I got another one coming up, I don't know, a couple of weeks from now. We're sending somebody back up to New York. So we will do the physical on-site or virtual. But once we have all of that done, it goes into my final review committee. They approve or disapprove it, and you're done. So we have done certifications, I hate to even say it out loud, 10 days. But that was because they had everything we needed. They uploaded it. It was all clean. It was clear. It was simple. There was no questions about it. We did the video conference call where he was running around with his apple showing me the, warehouse.
Must have been an engineer, huh?
Well, what we did is we told him that, if you had any grandchildren, go get a 13-year-old. She'll show them or teach them how to do the whole thing. It's one of those things with technology. My outlook on it is basically that we all love technology right up to the moment it doesn't work. and then once it don't work, well, I hate this. I get these phone calls from people just crying and screaming. What's the matter? Oh, the damn computer broke. Well, okay. So,
Well, one thing I noticed on your website too is you have a fast track program. Can you talk about that real quick?
yeah, thank you. It's a good question. As I've said repeatedly, our mentors were the women and the minorities. And because we know what documents they require, like I said, we merged those two and they're virtually identical in the first place. What we said is we trust the women and the minorities as our mentors to capture the relevant business documentation. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll basically waive all those documents that we just talked about, how much you got to upload. We'll waive those. What we won't waive is pulling your military records and making sure you're a vet. But again, some of those, we can do those a few days, or sometimes that's really quick. So we can pull all of that, get that stuff sent to us, and then we can get back on the phone with you. We can do those, a couple of weeks, a month. Sometimes, they're really quick. But that's because at that point, that's honoring, if you will, not only the work that we know the We Bank and the National Minority Supplier Development Council does, and that's how we implemented that whole fast track program.
Just like insurance, you get a license, you got to do continuing education to hold your license. Do you guys is there a continuing education program for these veteran-owned businesses to hold their certifications?
No, not in the way that you're asking that question. We require, see, one of the things that happened is in these years of supplier diversity, there were several books written on best practices. And in reading those books, particularly, the minority was the first, the $1 Billion Roundtable was second. What their best practices required is a recertification every year. Now, in that recertification, you have to not only sign it, you have to indicate any change in ownership, you have to get it notarized, and you, in essence, are sending us a document that says, we're not lying, honestly, truthfully, we are still doing what we're doing, and we will accept that. But that will last basically through a cycle of 3 years, and at that third year going in, we will then do a complete recertification. Because what we want to make sure is that the people that we started with are still operating that business. Now, what we found very quickly, if I certify you today, and you die tomorrow, your business partners, your company, by the agreement you have signed with us, is required to notify us as soon as possible that not only the ownership has changed, but that the veteran that we certified is no longer in the company or involved in the company for whatever reason. And we will immediately pull your certification. Immediately take you out of our database. Now people say, man, that's pretty harsh. No, again, I go back to the word integrity. But here's the point. We have had that situation over and over again. Unfortunately, a lot of veterans carrying a lot of different problems when they come home, right? We have people who are severely disabled. We have people with cancer and the burnt pits and all the other medical issues. So we were acutely aware of those. Second to that, what we've always said was the benchmark of ownership is 51% minimum. But what we also did is say that 51% could be one or more veterans if, say, all of you are disabled or all of you are just veteran owned, and I shouldn't say just, that's not fair, veteran owned. Fine. We just need to know the percentages. We need to know that. And again, going back to the operating agreements and all of those kind of things, because we've had this happen where there were 5 veterans who owned that business. The one who had the majority of the shares died. First thing in is they said, are you going to pull our certification? And we said, I have to look at how is the ownership being divided. He said, yeah, that's all in the operating agreement. Well, guess what? It was. And we opened it up, we looked at it, it was upon, death or removal, these shares will all be split. And we said, we'll continue it because as far as we can see, we have 4 veterans who are running a business. You guys own 90% of the company anyway, so we don't see a reason to pull it. So it's that kind of humanity, if you will. It's that kind of interaction, that level, that we really talk to our vets. My certification analyst, Navy veteran, she was a former disabled American veteran service officer. She was really good at this stuff, right? So I said, why don't you come and work for me, and we can actually help veterans, actually survive and grow and beyond all that. And she did. And I got to tell you, when she's talking to the vets, she'll say, well, what is your percentage of disability? 10. Oh, no, you should be at least 30. So, I get these emails going, oh my God, I love Tony. I said, yeah, but did you ever get certified? Oh yeah, we got certified. So, we look at the size, the scope of where we are and what could we do because, frankly, we use the word my or our or the family idea. These are our fellow veterans. And that's the way we treat them.
And there's probably some people thinking right now, hey, I'm a veteran-owned business.
Yeah.
What sort of opportunities are available to me with these companies? Because I do insurance or I'm a lawyer. I don't do, I'm not a construction worker like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But what opportunities are available out there for, these veteran-owned businesses?
Well, like I said, I got a $96 billion pie. I think there's kind of a little bit of everything. It's funny about the lawyers. Lawyers, especially those who are running, 1, 2, 3 person shops. Okay. Nobody's going to hire me. Those are the guys we get more contracts out of than the big, 100 lawyer firms.
Really?
Really. Because again, they're looking for specific legal skill. What I tell all the veterans, the size is not important initially. What's important is either the product or the skill that you bring to the table. I tell the story of a little 2-man crew. One of my corps called me and said, hey, you got any veteran-owned businesses that, do catering? I said, look, I got this 2-man crew. They have their, food truck, but, they do really good barbecue. I said, just look at me. Okay, I haven't had many deals, and I personally sampled that food. And she, oh, that's great. We would love that. We love barbecue. Anyway, make a long story short, at that event, there was a gentleman there who, again, I'm in Detroit, was a plant manager. Now, maybe that don't mean much to anybody, but that plant had 5,000 employees. And he said, we have meetings there every day. The union and business and the lines. Can you guys come out and, do a couple of events? Oh, we would love to. The last time I talked to him, he's now hired 8 more veterans. He's got 3 trucks. And it's like, oh my God, I continue to grow. Now, is that 1 in 1,000? Maybe. But then again, if you're a little 2-man truck running veterans and you got a food truck, you probably should get certified and talk to me because I want to know where you're at and what you're doing. I had the same thing happen down in Texas. One of my corporations, for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. Hey, you got anybody who does landscaping? I need somebody to come out here and mow my damn lawn. What? Yeah, but you got to understand it's huge, right? And some plant, to 1,000 acres or whatever. So, it's a little more than mowing my lawn. Those guys basically only work with them, because they're just so full, all the way through on this one. So, at this point, it just has been a thing where I have too many success stories to tell anybody that chances are, a little company called Walmart, might have heard of them. They actually put a program together that I thought was a phenomenal program. I wish we had more time to work with them in this program, but what they did, because of the volume of business, They actually put a program in place to help our veteran businesses to limit it to 10 stores. Can you supply me enough material for just these 10 stores to test? And I thought, how brilliant. I wish I had more time to work with them and develop that whole program. But that's what I'm getting at. Our corporations, I had one today, I won't name the company, who called me and said, I got an idea. I said, you know what? I love you. And any one of my companies who call me and tell me they got an idea, lay it on me. I got 3 pages of notes. It's like, hey, those are the kind of things that I tell people, don't limit yourself. You want to go fishing, go fish where the fish are. I got some pretty big fish. So come on, come on, go fishing with me,
Yeah, outside of Amazon, I'm pretty sure Walmart's the biggest.
Yeah, I got this other one called Apple,
Yeah,
Bank
there
of
you go.
America, JP Morgan Chase, Coca-Cola. Yeah, so got all these little, I got these automotive too. Oh, wait, I'm going down to see BMW here.
Well, there's something that I know we're running up on our time here, but I really want to ask you about your upcoming events
Yeah,
because I saw it's based around the Federal Trade Commission.
yeah,
Can you share a little bit about what this event means for,
yeah.
veterans who are part of your organization?
Yeah, because you mentioned insurance and lawyers. The Federal Reserve Bank, there's 12 of those banks nationwide, and of course, you always hear about the Federal Reserve Board. We have been working together for the last 8 years, and what this is the Federal Reserve Bank will be there. We're bringing in other federal agencies as well. We're bringing in all the insurance companies, we're bringing in banks, we're bringing in all these other corporations that people wouldn't necessarily think that they would want to hire veteran businesses, but we've seen millions of dollars in contracts come out of this. The comments I get from the buyers in our corporation is the most sophisticated group of veterans they've ever met. Because again, who's coming? Insurance guys, real estate guys, all right, lawyers. Again, even people are doing all kinds of leasing agreements. Just the whole economic. If you look at it as a economy, if you're a part of that, as opposed to a manufacturing, right? But again, even in manufacturing, I got yelled at from the automotives when I didn't include them one year, and they said, "You ever heard of Ford Red Carpet Leasing as a multi-billion-dollar business?" So, yeah, right. So again, here's the point. We will have right now. I believe I have 2 already signed. I've got 3 more committed. So we'll probably have 4 or 5, anyways, of the Federal Reserve branches. They buy their own stuff. It is amazing what they buy. I joke about it, and I know we're running out of time, but the first time I talked to them, they actually called me and asked me if I had any veterans that made ammunition. I thought it was a punk call, they were joking, hey, look, I'm busy, foot nothing,
Yeah, one out of four. 1 out of 4 makes ammo.
Yeah, you go to one of their banks and you know that they got their ammunition, man. I'm telling you. But this is a great event, especially for those who are in the financial world or institutional type of arena, if you will. One of my vets called me and said he just got hired to do a $2 billion bond underwrite, or he's underwriting the $2 billion bond issue. Sounds impressive. I don't know what. And he'll be there. The other one is what we call our national matchmaking event, and I'll tell you that's what we call the largest certified veteran business matchmaking event in the country, because here we will have a lot of these large corporations. Again, not only all the automotive, but the banks and all these companies, will be at this event because they want to hire veteran-owned businesses, and they're coming. And we'll be down in Louisville, Kentucky, November 8th and 9th. We recommend that you go to my website, and I believe that registration is open. If not, it will be for our national event. Obviously, the event on August 10th here in Detroit is live. It's actually in the bank. And if you've never been inside a Federal Reserve Bank, it's just fun to be there. It's like, oh my God, it's a whole different world, you know? Yeah, it's, you know, but again, these are events because what we got is a fulfillment of a promise. Our corporation said they will help us, and they've done that. And so those two events, if you're a veteran owned business, you do not have to be certified to attend, by the way. So if you want to just come in and check us out, come out and check out the corporations and who's there doing business with us and looking for businesses, veteran businesses to work with, you're going to have two shots this year. And that's one of the things we tell them. Just because you're getting certified, don't expect, the sky to open and a ton of money come falling out and land in your lap. That don't happen, dude. So you get out and work it. It's like any other sales thing. All that does is, again, it gives you access. And if you do something they like, or you got a skill that they want, they'll at least talk to you.
Love that. Well, I'll speak on behalf of veteran-owned businesses. I mean, thank you for laying the groundwork for this because, this is a huge opportunity. I've heard about federal contracting and being certified in that aspect, but this brings it to a different level, I think. There's more corporations out there than there is government. So, you gotta, if you're not involved with this, they need to get involved with this. But I'm going to list all your information in the show notes, Keith. But one last question for you, and you've kind of already said this a little bit, but, before you leave this earth, what kind of legacy or impact do you want to leave in the veteran community?
First off, I object to the question because I have no intentions of leaving. You can take me out, yelling and screaming. No, you know what? The only legacy I want is that I was a good man. To my wife, I've been married to the same woman 51 years. I have 2 children. I have grandkids. I got 3 great grandsons. That if there's a legacy, is that I'm an American. I volunteered. It was not, I enlisted and did, what I thought was expected of, someone in my generation and in that time. And I did it, and I did it with honor. So, if the NVBDC is my legacy, I wouldn't complain. Obviously, I'm very proud of it, but that is a legacy that I would share then with the people I've already not only mentioned by name, but also the people who both sides of this formula has helped me get to that level of a legacy and made the NVBDC what it really is. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to them.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this one, check out these videos right over here, and we'll see you in the next video.